because it's probably the newest thing, I'll have you start with here because the funny thing is, like, I remember seeing the trailers for this movie. This is Robin Wright and Tom Hanks, and the
Hmm.
whole gist of the movie is it effectively takes place from one single shot in the living room. Like the camera's in one spot in the living room, and it seemed like it was going to be super hyped up, and then it kind of fell off. I didn't see anything, and then I guess it's out. Like I didn't hear about when it was coming out or anything. And granted, it's a rough time of year, right? We're like 2 weeks out from Wicked. There's a couple of things coming out, so it's a hard time to come out with a film.
Right.
But this landed. So yeah, I want to know what you thought of it and what it was and all that jazz.
So I saw it on Tuesday, and I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't based on the reviews and based on some of the, outside chatter, I was not excited to see this. However, my parents saw it 2 weeks ago and they absolutely loved it. And I watched the trailer again. I was like, how bad this be? Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, and then we have the same director, Robert Zemeckis,
Hmm.
from Forrest Gump. He's bringing it together and fast forwarding it to 2024. So I thought I'd give it a shot. I'll tell you, Kevin, I loved it. I thought it
Yeah.
was
Okay.
so good. I thought it was so good. Okay, first of all, I don't know why people are being haters about this film. Maybe they're just, I don't want to undermine other people's thinking, but I think some people just thought it was so limited because it was in the living room, right? And this one
Right.
shot.
Right.
I thought it was incredibly brilliant because you start with, well, they take you throughout time, and I will say it's not, all done in chronological order. It will
Okay.
take you through different periods of time, and they'll go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So you have, for example, that same spot. It takes place in, I want to say it's in Pennsylvania. I want to say suburban or somewhere outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
And they show you when it's completely grassed over with the dinosaurs, and they take you to the Native Americans, and you see this love formation between a man and a woman in, I don't know what tribe, forgive me, but that happens there. And then decades later, hundreds of years later, you see people settle in more of like a colonial setting, and you get to see Revolutionary War happen, and people are like going across that land, and there's a house in the distance, and then you hear people speaking, and you find out Benjamin Franklin either resided across the street or family members, and you see Benjamin Franklin there. You then take it from like 1800s all the way to early 1900s, and you start to see the building blocks of a home being built from the ground up in that we'll call it lot of land, in that lot of land. And you see the first family that lives there, and it's a husband, wife, and a young daughter. And this is someone who's, you don't know exactly his job, but you know he's very much so into aviation. And there's the wife and husband that are going back and forth about, no, I don't like you flying. It's not safe. There's all these accidents, etc. So you've got that one family, and then you move to like a maybe a decade or two later, and then you have this other family, maybe in like the 20s. It's got like a very swanky, like even like a jazz vibe. And you've got, I don't even know if they're husband and wife, but they're a couple. The woman is definitely a bit younger than the man, and the man is an inventor, and he ends up, you find out, being the inventor of lazy boy chairs, couches, recliners. Let's go with recliners, the recliner itself, and how a lot of their, or I guess his ideas started in that living room. You then go 2 years later, you see this couple come in and purchase the home, and it's a husband and wife. Husband is fresh out of war. Wife is excited to start a new chapter, and she ends up mentioning she's pregnant, and she is pregnant with the character who ends up being Tom Hanks years later down the line. And his character is pretty much like, I would say, the main character that you're following throughout the film here. and he plays Richard Young. And then you get to meet Margaret Young, who is Robin Wright's character. So you see the room throughout different holidays, birthdays, Halloween, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and you get to meet Margaret when he's like figure in like late high school and them even like making love and potentially like conceiving their first child. And then they're also living in the house with the grandparents and throughout the decades, what that looks like to even after them, a African American family moves in and figure like, I don't know, 90s, 2000s. And they grow up and they have a son, and it takes you through even up to 2020 with COVID. So it's just showing so many historical events, and it reminds me a lot of Forrest Gump in terms of just in one film, how much ground historically is covered.
Hmm.
Granted, this is from the perspective of a living room, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was incredibly wholesome. And I know some people had some issues with like the skipping around and not following a chronological order. So you would go to the Native American couple that meet, and then how the Native American gentleman gives the woman a special necklace. And then that necklace is then found by a group of archaeologists who come to that house and they say, "Can we dig in your backyard?" And this is when Tom Hanks, this character, Richard's mother, I believe her name was Rose, she ends up giving them permission to go in the backyard, and they find the necklace after digging in the backyard. So it comes full circle, and you get to see just how many historical moments happen in that living room or in that space and people that lived in that area, and also just the historical events that are going on at that time from the television, from the radio. And I thought it was brilliant. I really did. And I know some people didn't like it. They thought it was a bit, I don't know if the word stale, but I think they wanted to leave that living room. And I just thought it was a very unique perspective of how life has a start, a middle, and an end. And you see that. And I think that's the point that Robert Zemeckis is trying to convey to people that, no matter what spot you're in, there's going to be a start, middle, and end. And he takes you through the starting point of each of these chapters in that space with the Native American couple, with the couple in like the early 1900s with the aviation, the guy who's really into aviation, and his wife who's like very bitter and not happy that he's wanting to explore and try this stuff out, to that couple who's just he's trying to invent something amazing and he comes up with Lazy Boy, to Tom Hanks and his whole family, which is really, that's probably, I think they move in like the 40s or 50s, and then you see them through early 2000s or something to that effect, or late 90s when they sell that house. And it's just so beautifully done. And you see death in almost each of these scenarios too, between Native American couple to, unfortunately, the the guy with the passion for aviation, his own funerals in that home. You get to see the
Hmm.
wedding of Margaret and Richard, Robin Wright, and Tom Hanks in that living room. So many beautiful moments and very important things happen in that space. And I think it's just an interesting perspective because even I don't know, I just thought about my own childhood home, which has been here for at least 35, maybe 36, 37 years. And what was this place? What was it like in 50 years ago before this whole place? I mean, I grew up in a condominium, but I am in my parents' home this evening. And what did this spot look like 50 years ago before this place was built? Because it was built in the 80s. And
Yeah.
that's just fascinating to think about.
Yeah, it's funny. Like it's not the same, but like so we moved, to this house in Connecticut, and it's out in the middle of kind of nowhere, and we've got a few acres and we're surrounded by trees and stuff. But if I find it on Google Maps, funny enough, it was 10 years ago that they took the picture. So before I
Hmm.
moved here, before I ever saw it. And the property itself looks a little different. And so you can imagine just that 10 years is just a little different. Imagine how, 100 however many years, right?
Hmm.
Like, so yeah, it's actually kind of cool to see this evolution over time. And I actually thought when I saw the trailer, um, I thought the idea was one of the coolest things, that I'd heard is like forcing you can't leave this spot, basically. You're just going to see this story from this location.
Right.
And like to me, that's like an artistic challenge for the director and the actors and all that. And I think that's cool. I think that's what makes it special. And if people, I don't know how people wouldn't understand that's what was going to happen in this movie from the trailer. Like I felt like the
Hmm.
trailer was pretty clear that we're not going anywhere. We're seeing it from this location. Um, so I kind of if people's complaint is that it never leaves that location, I'm like, you didn't pay attention to the material handed to you going in. I know
Right.
that on Rotten Tomatoes, it's like a 36 from the critics and a
It's
58 from the
ridiculous.
audience. I want to read up on the why of the 36 from the critics, especially like 56 from the audience. I can kind of deal with because audiences are a little fickle and all that, but like such a low rating from the critics, it's hard to believe that the Zemeckis, that Tom Hanks, that Robin Wright would all be part of something that it sounds like it should be
Hmm.
bad according to the reviews. And um it yeah, it just always looked good to me. I was very interested in it from the instant I saw the first trailer, because I thought it was such a cool concept.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the reviews they're trying to repeat Forrest Gump. Yes, there's definitely some thematic similarities in what they're trying to achieve here, but that's part of what I loved about it. Honestly, it is part of what I loved about it, and you're not following just one character. There, I mean, even though, let's be real, Tom Hanks and Robin Wright are the A-listers here, and
Hmm.
they do get more screen time than I think anyone else. It does overlap with different stories, and I kind of like how they didn't have everything done in chronological order. I think the whole point was to showcase there was a beginning, middle, and end, and whether it be death or just the end of living there. In some cases, it was just moving on. I think that was a beautiful thing, and having it the end scene and like not to give too much, but you see Richard Young and his wife Margaret come together, and she's suffering from Alzheimer's, or she's in midst of Alzheimer's, and then coming back to that living room, she starts remembering things. And I mean, pretty much like at the end of this film, they're sitting in an empty living room with fold out chairs. And very similar to how it ends in Forrest Gump, they start to zoom out of the living room and you finally get to see the whole house, that you get to see the street, and then you see a bird kind of flying above, sort of like how they had that feather dispensed
Hmm.
at the end of the film. And I just thought that was so well done. And I mean, Forrest Gump is one of my top two, three movies of all time. And I thought this was a really good, yes, I mean, look, it wasn't meant to be a Forrest Gump. I don't think it was meant to be a Forrest Gump, but I thought they really gave me that similar wholesome happy feeling at the end like it did with Forrest Gump. It really did. And I thought he did a great job with it.
Yeah, I like I said, I want to see it. I think, seeing the scores on Rotten Tomatoes doesn't really turn me off. It kind of makes me um more interested. But yeah, I my biggest thing is I didn't realize it was already out. But
Yeah.
I probably won't see it in the theater. But I will definitely watch it when it streams. Like it's definitely on one of like my it's high up on my list of films that are coming that I want to see. So
Yeah. And I'm going through right now the reviews, and I think this is honestly, I think the film is made for an older crowd. I really do. And I think my old soul was totally cradled by it, and I loved it. And I was not expecting a Forrest Gump, just to clarify. I was not expecting a Forrest Gump, but it gave me the feels of Forrest Gump, and I loved that. I really did. And I think it told overlapping stories in such a poignant way. And I think this one review sticks out to me. As a seasoned citizen, I related to the entire film. It touched my heart. Not sure that someone younger would feel the same way.
I can see
You're
that.
not going
Like,
to,
yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, it's such a generational thing, such a big thing that yeah, I can see how it is definitely targeted towards older people.
I
Um,
think so, but I'm even just like looking at the critics. Interesting to look at if you're interested in movie making technique, but as a drama, it's not there. Yeah, it's not very dramatic. Fair. If you're looking for something with like a very deep plot and to just put you at the edge of your seat, this is not the film. This is not the film. You're not seeing these big action-packed Marvel-esque or DC type of movie. You're not seeing something with a lot of special effects in the form of fighting or a natural disaster per se, like you would see in Twister or anything like that. I hate to say this is very prevalent in 2024. It's not
mhm.
that. I mean, the CGI of the faces. And I think some people have a problem with that. And I mean, I don't know why people are so critical of it. It's not like this is the first time someone has done something like this,
Yeah.
but I thought it was really great. I mean, yes, they made him look like I'm going to call it the Tom Hanks of when he was in Big, like a very
Hmm.
young Tom Hanks and a very young Robin Wright. And I think some people that bothered them, but yeah. And everyone's also just comparing it too much to Forrest Gump. And I think this was not meant to be Forrest Gump Part Two.
Right.
It's just a very wholesome movie with two actors who have phenomenal chemistry on camera and just putting them in a very, in a slightly different light, showing them over generations, similar to Forrest Gump, but it was not meant to be Forrest Gump 2. And I think that's what people are so fixated on, unfortunately. And that's possibly why it got such bad reviews.
Hmm. Cool. Well, yeah, like I said, I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm still, you know, critics be damned. I'm still excited for it. So,
Yeah,
um,
no, definitely. I hope more people see it and don't get deterred by some of the curmudgeons that are out there and that are just expecting it to be like another Forrest Gump, which it's not.
yeah,
So definitely see it. It's a very special movie, and it's I think it's brilliantly written. I think the acting was very good, and so was the directing. So was even just how they transformed the space over that long period of time, thousands of years. It's great.
cool. All right. Well, I will move us along to something that is far less wholesome. I
Dun, dun, dun.
sticking with the things that I have that are at least relatively new. There was a show that I didn't think I was going to get to watch. It's on Stars, and I don't have a Stars subscription. But my mom is a big Outlander fan, and there's something else that she wanted to see, but she renewed her Star subscription and gave me her login. I can't really get in trouble for it. We basically live in the same house. She lives in my in-law unit, so I can't get in trouble for password sharing because it comes from the same place. So I uh, went ahead and gave a show called Sweetpea a watch. And it stars Ella Purnell, who is in Fallout. She's one of the characters in Arcane. She's kind of having a bit of a career explosion right now. She's in Yellow Jackets, um, and she is very, very talented. Like if you see her in Fallout, she's like super sweet and cute. Her character, one of her like big lines is "Okie dokie." Like things go to shit. Like she just kind of goes with the flow, and she's all cute. In Arcane, she's like the crazy bad one. And she's a little all over the map. So I saw this trailer for Sweet Pea, and it's like it's kind of like a woman breaking down over time. So the gist of the story is that in high school, this girl was sort of bullied um, by one primary girl and then a couple of other girls, and really kind of made to feel invisible. Like the what they would say to her is that like they thought she had died, and then they would pretend like she was a ghost and like just treated her terribly, terribly in high school, and to the point where she got um super like nervous and twitchy, and she would pull out her own hair. And so one of the scenes, that kind of shows how bad it was for her in high school is she goes to prom or whatever, and she wears a wig because she's pulled out so much of her hair. And of course, the bitchy girl walks by and pulls her wig off in the middle of prom, and everybody can see, how bad this is. And the reason that she was so awkward in high school before everybody um, started picking on her is like her mom left and her dad was a little odd and all this stuff. So she's now, in her 20s, and she's trying to or she wants to be a journalist, like a newspaper writer. So she works at a newspaper office as the receptionist, where nobody treats her right. Like the boss walks in, literally throws his jacket on her and just walks away. And like, so she's undervalued there. She's super creative, but nobody's giving her a chance. Um, and so this is a 6 episode limited series. I haven't watched the 6th episode. It literally came out yesterday. So the series just ended. At the moment, there's no plans for a season two. So it apparently comes to an end. That should be, relatively satisfying. And so I'm excited to see where it ends. But the gist of it is as she starts to, or her dad dies in the first episode, who she's like, it was kind of her last tether. Like was taking care of her dad. She stayed in this town to take care of her dad. And then, of course, at the funeral where people are again kind of ignoring her and, you know, leaving her to feel, less than, um, of course, this woman that bullied her in high school shows up to the funeral. And so she starts to kind of get in her own head again. And, the world starts to um, feel overwhelming for her again because now she's reliving this childhood trauma. She just lost her dad. Work sucks. Nobody's giving her a chance. And she starts to get more and more angry at the things that are happening around her. And she snaps and she murders a dude. She kills a guy in like a back alley kind of thing. And she actually like feels great about it. And when the cops show up to um investigate, she realizes she's the only person with any kind of inside track to this because she did it. So she uses that to her advantage at the newspaper and kind of worms her way into a writing gig, which really takes off when she kills a second person. So now she's almost become like the serial killer, but they're in her opinion, at least, they're bad people. Like they're people that um, treated other people poorly, like she'd been treated poorly. And so um, I don't want to give too much away, but she starts on this downward spiral and plans her next kill, and she takes somebody, and she keeps them but when she's about to kill this third person that she takes, after talking to this person, she realizes that maybe they're not as bad as she thinks they are because life put them on a trajectory like she was put on a trajectory to be as bad as they were. And so, she's super conflicted about it. And now she's trying to figure out, you know, who her next target is because this person maybe isn't as bad as she thought they were, but maybe somebody was not good to her. And so it's interesting because it's not I wouldn't call it a comedy, but it has its funny moments because it's such a chaotic story. And she's amazing because she walks this really great line of being um meek and sweet and broken, but she's also going crazy. Like she's really losing her mind and um uh trying to find herself in a way that it's completely obviously unhealthy. And it's really good. Looking it up on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 86 from the critics and I think it says a 69 from the audience, which is actually surprising, but I um I really enjoyed it. And so I'm excited to watch the last episode um and just see where it goes because it could go a handful of ways. It's billed as a thriller. It's certainly not a horror film. And it really is a descent into madness film. And, the real question is she going to come out the other side and be sane, or is she gonna go crazier and kill at least the person that she's got and maybe somebody else and kind of continue this journey as a kill the bad guy kind of serial killer, kind of like Dexter or something like that. So, um, yeah, it's really interesting and it's a lot of fun and she's absolutely amazing in it. So, I definitely recommend it to anybody uh, that's into, the thriller type of movies. Or series, sorry, it's 6 episodes. But that's the other thing too, is because it's a series, episodes are like 45 minutes to an hour. This is a story that probably wouldn't have worked as a movie, but because you allow it to breathe and you stretch it out into a 6 episode limited series, I think it works better. You get more character depth. You get to learn about the background characters a little more, which is critical to the story. And even if it's only a one season show, if it's never going to get a second season, if it's all buttoned up at the end, it still allows you to tell the full story. So I think a series is better than
Very nice. And how long is each episode?
I want to say they're 40, let me double check, but I think they're about 45 minutes to an hour. Just gonna tell me 50, yeah, 50 minutes, 45 minutes, yeah, right in there. So yeah, it went pretty quick for me. The only, like I said, the only gotcha is you got to have stars. A lot of people don't have
Right.
stars. I don't know if cable companies still do the packages where every now and then you get a free month or something of a channel. Um,
Hmm.
there's not a lot on stars. The movie that I want to watch, but I haven't had time to this week was it's not the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's the something ungentlemanly warfare. But it's about the World War II like U-boat hunters that were all crazy. But it's like Henry Cavill and a couple other
Hmm.
guys, and it looked like a lot of fun. Um, and so I'm definitely gonna check that one out. Um, but yeah, Stars is a hard network to pick up because there's just not a lot on there. If you love Outlander, then you got a reason to check it out.
Hmm.
Stars, but I don't think I would tell somebody to get Stars just for this. If the opportunity, well, if you got a week or a weekend of Stars for free for some reason, or you wanted to do a trial of Stars to watch this, I think that's worth it. You just have to remember to cancel afterwards so you don't end up paying for it if you're not going to
Right.
watch it, because otherwise it's just another movie channel, and there's not necessarily a lot on there, and most things end up within a month on a different streaming service anyway. So no need to get married into that.
Yeah.
Um, but
I think Stars and sometimes other networks, like if you go in and let's say you purchase movie tickets on AMC or certain purchases that you'll make, they'll give you like either discounted subscription or free subscription trial for like a month or two. So I think even like from Macy's, if I make a purchase, like after I like purchase and complete my order, it will give me some pop-ups for it's usually some sort of free trial for a network like Stars or like a meal kit or something like that
yeah, yeah.
to try out.
Yeah,
So they're definitely out there.
yeah, if the opportunity comes up to get stars for free, then I think this is worth catching on a free. Like I said, if you are an Outlander person or you're looking for that kind of story too, Outlander is on there. Like that's one of their exclusives, and that show was really, really popular. I know the books were really popular, so that is out there. I have not watched that one, but it exists and it's popular. So if you end up, especially if you end up with like a month free of stars, then you got a couple things to dig into. If you only had a week or a weekend, I'd say give this one a shot because it's cool, but it'll go quick. Um, but yeah, that's that. All right, we can move on to you watched Wicked Little Letters, which came out last year, I guess. But sounds like it's got a stellar cast and it was a lot of
It
fun.
does. It was. Wasn't planning to watch it this evening, had a change of plans, and it's been on my list for some time now. It's recently come to Netflix, and I believe it says it came out in, okay, so it actually came out March 2024 because I remember it being in the theaters and I missed it this past spring, but it has the very renowned cast of, well, in my opinion, one of my favorite actresses the past couple of years, Olivia Colman. Uh, it has Jessie Buckley, who I've seen in a film or two, Timothy Spall, who is in Harry Potter, and then some other cast members. But this is actually based on a true story from the 1920s in a little town in the UK. And it's about a note scandal where neighbors and townspeople are receiving some pretty, let's just say, colorful letters in the mail, with the use of profanity and just things that are popping up out of nowhere. And the main two characters are this very good Christian woman, Edith Swan, who Olivia Colman plays, and then Jessie Buckley, who plays a neighbor Irish woman who moved from Ireland to England. I think within the past year or so, they had mentioned with her young daughter Nancy, and Rose and Edith, they're next door neighbors, and they start off very close in the very beginning. You realize that they share a friendship, and Edith talks about Rose as, someone that she got very close with. And then one of the beginning scenes, you see that Edith gets a letter in the mail, and there's a lot of profanity, and it's like it's funny though because it's just like a mishmash of like curse words and just like horrible. It's like Mean Girls, like from the Burn book, but they put it in letter form from the 1920s, and you're just like, oh my God, they said arse, and they said call me a slut, and just like all these other like things are just like okay, like not nice, but just funny how these are just all being sent out anonymously in the mail, and someone has too much time on their hands. So immediately the fingers pointed at Rose, who's kind of like this foul-mouthed woman who they don't really know her whole backstory, but they just know she fled from Ireland. As far as they know, that she is a widow who that her husband died in, I guess, World War I, and her daughter came here. She's having a relationship with someone that she's met here, who's the actor. I don't know the actor, but the it looks like the character's name is Bill. Malachi or Malaki, I think Malachi Kirby. I've seen him before, but I don't know. I can't pinpoint what he's been in, but they have relationships. So Christian woman, Edith Swan, and then she lives with her parents, um, Edward, and then her mother, Victoria Swan, who is the mother in Bridget Jones. So it was really nice to see a very familiar face in Gemma Jones. I'm sorry, yeah, Gemma Jones, who plays Victoria Swan. And they're very Christian. You see and hear her swearing, Rose Gooding, and you hear her having sex next door. And I think they're just forming a very negative opinion about her. And once these letters are swarming, Edith Swan goes to the police and makes a report and says, I think it's my neighbor. She's pretty foul-mouthed. She's very confrontational with men, and it's interesting how they frame like the difference between male and female dynamics. They first go to the police station and you meet Officer Gladys Moss, who is played by and Hannah Vassan, who's been in, I think, one or two different episodes of Black Mirror. And she's someone that became a police officer because her father was a police officer. And unfortunately, during this time, female police officers are not given the same duties or responsibilities as a man. So like a woman and at that time, I guess, wasn't immediately given the opportunity to make an arrest and be able to carry handcuffs and wasn't able to really get involved in investigations. So she's almost just like the step one when you enter the precinct and almost like serving as like a secretary, but she is a, a police officer. So reporting to her, who then reports to her boss and the other guy that works there, who is played by Hugh Skinner from Fleabag. And they're trying to, or based on Eva's story, she has a very, in her mind, convincing type of argument as to why this could be her new neighbor who she was formerly friends with, but she notices like a bit unhinged and is has like, very foul language like the language used in these letters. And at this point, I think after meeting Rose and they hear her story, the people in the town start to believe this has to be this woman because she's foul mouthed, she's single, she's sleeping around with this man. And, everyone just starts to gang up on her, a little bit like the Crucible a bit. And then you come to find, like, shocker, I don't know if you're gonna see it, Kevin, but like spoiler, it ends up being Edith who's writing these letters, sort of like the Regina George being like, she's a fat slut or whatever. It's like she's the one that's writing it for attention. And you find out she has like a really bad past. And this is her way of like trying to rebel through these letters and sending them out. And instead of her taking accountability and ownership, she's blaming it on her neighbor who's kind of mm, rebellious and is more believable versus this good Christian woman, Christian by day and then at night writing these completely outlandish letters and putting them in the mail and going on these walks to put them in the little mailboxes in England. So it's fascinating. This is based on a true scandal, and this female police officer, excuse me, is doubting Edith's story and she becomes suspicious. And then she ends up comparing handwriting. She notices the writings in these letters match what's in Edith's handwriting versus what's in Rose's handwriting. And she's able to help prove that Edith is actually framing her neighbor, who happens to be unhinged and very seem like at face value someone who would probably commit these type of crimes, but really it's her. So it's interesting how they frame this. But I was kind of shocked, not shocked that it was a true story, but it's just something like where nowadays, people would write nasty comments online. It's like, oh, I'm going to send it through letter and I'm not going to show you who I am and just run away.
Yeah, it sounds like fun.
It was fun.
I like Olivia Colman, and when she does comedy, she's really funny. Like she really is really
She
funny.
is. Hmm.
Um, Jessie Buckley, I saw her in a movie called Men, which is certainly not a comedy at all. I'm
Hmm.
trying to think. I think that might be all I've really seen her in.
Yeah, I saw a woman talking a couple months ago, which was not
Hmm.
the best movie, but yeah, she's one of the main characters in that. It looks like she was in Judy as well, which came out, I
Yeah.
guess, what was that, 2019? But yeah, she's popping up in different places.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. This film, it was as I was saying, like the pre-show, it's a mishmash of like some of your favorite British actors and throw them into one comedy. You've got Harry Potter represented,
Uh-huh.
Fleabag. It's just a little bit of everything. So it's a really fun cast. It's a funny movie, but also clearly a very, very serious event. But it's just kind of a mockery of people that are rebelling and acting out of their normal, I guess, day-to-day character and how blackmail's being played, and also just how people underestimate females in this film. So it definitely showcases how, unfortunately, women in the workforce weren't and still to this day aren't taken as seriously. But overall, it was fun to watch.
Yeah, I think if I my biggest problem is I've got to remember um is hopefully I'll remember to watch it because I I it looks like fun and I definitely like the cast and and it should be entertaining. I, I just have to have the time and have to remember. I feel like I'm behind on everything, so it'll take me a little while to get to stuff, but I hope I remember it because yeah, it looks
Yeah.
fun.
And it got good reviews both from critics, gave it an 80%, which is pretty good, and then a 92% from the audience. So pretty positive on both
Yeah,
ends.
yeah, and it's looks like it's only like an hour and 40 minutes, so it's not
Very
particularly
short.
long. Yeah, it'll go pretty
Hmm.
quick. So um,
Definitely. Give it a watch.
yeah, all right, cool. Well, I am I well, I'm not out of relevant things. I've got two things to go over real quick. And one uh might turn into a fun conversation and might make me look like an idiot. We'll see. But the first thing, my kids and I have been doing what we call Shyamalanathon. We've been watching all the M. Night Shyamalan movies. And we're not done. We've got a few more to go. We've been watching them in order. We started with The Sixth Sense. I think the only one we didn't see was Lady in the Water and The Last Airbender. We've watched The Last Airbender before because it's based on Avatar, and the TV show just came out. And the TV show was incredible. The original like animated series is one of the highest rated television series, period, on IMDb ever. And so we got into that, and it's been a lot of fun. Like it's kind of a fun little journey to go on because you can see where he started. Like Shyamalan started with The Sixth Sense, which is by all accounts a great movie. It still holds up. My oldest, I don't know if he'd already heard the twist or whatever, but he figured out the twist before it happened. Um, I feel like it's kind of like the Blair Witch Project with found footage. Like it's become so common that something has a twist or that something has like you should be looking for that thing um that when you know you're looking for the twist to come, it's a little easier to figure out. At the time when The Sixth Sense came out, it made Shyamalan look like a genius because there weren't that many twisty movies, or something that had a significant twist at the end. But that one was good. They dug that. Um, I didn't realize that his second film was Unbreakable. For the longest time, I thought The Others was a Shyamalan film with Nicole Kidman, where um, she had her kids in this house and they had to keep the house dark and they thought the house was haunted. And the whole twist of the story was they were actually the ghosts and they were haunting the house because I think she had killed her kids for I don't remember if it was like a plague reason or if she would just lost her mind and killed her kids or whatever. But that's why they were trapped there because there was this horrific incident and they were the
Hmm.
ghosts. And so what they thought were ghosts were people living in the house, you know, past the times that they had been there. They saw this woman that was super scary. They thought was a ghost, but it turns out she was a woman trying to do a seance and all this stuff. Anyways, not a Shyamalan film, so I was super confused. Um, we watched Unbreakable, and the thing about watching with my oldest and my youngest, my two kids that I watch movies with the most, is that um, we're almost always looking for a reason to laugh at a movie. It doesn't matter how good it is. We're a bad audience. Like the reason that one of our favorite movies is Moonfall, and it is a terrible, terrible, terrible movie. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. Doesn't make any sense at all. But we laugh our asses off because it's just silly. Um, so we watch something like Unbreakable, which is like a 70% from the critics, 77% from the audience. And I think you didn't you go through this trilogy not too long ago? You watched Unbreakable, Split and Glass.
I
Okay.
did. I did. Andrew recommended it to me well over a year ago, I think. I don't know. He recommended it to me at some point within the past year, year and a half, 2 years. And I finally like sat down within like a week time span and watched all of them.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. So yeah, so we watched Unbreakable last week, I think. Um
Okay.
and you know, it's a funny one because like his thing with water just kind of is weird.
It is very weird.
But overall, I mean, it's a decent movie. Like you kind of, especially now that we live in this era where superhero movies are everywhere.
Hmm.
This felt like kind of a genre bending thing at the time because it was 2000. There were some X-Men movies and some other superhero movies, but they weren't as prevalent as they are now. And so
Sure.
telling like this super grounded sort of superhero movie worked. Um, they they really dug the reveal at the end that Glass planned all this stuff and like killed hundreds of people to find um
Yep.
our main character. But then it drove him crazy that like you did this whole movie and then there's like probably what could have been another 15 minutes to half hour of film is like 30 seconds of written dialogue on the screen. They're like, Mr. Glass was crazy, and they put him in a mental institution. And you're just like, okay, like he murdered like a
Right.
ton of people.
Right.
But
Exactly.
so we laughed about that and we watched that. And then we watched Signs, and it's about the time that we started watching Signs that we realized that Shyamalan has this weird like attachment to water in some way. Like the whole thing about Signs is the aliens come down, they come take over the planet.
Hmm.
Um, they're invading everywhere, but Mel Gibson is the main character. Joaquin Phoenix is his, I think he's his brother.
Hmm.
Mel Gibson was a pastor, but his wife died, and so he's kind of fallen from grace, right? Like he's not particularly religious anymore. He's kind of mad at God for letting his wife die. He's got a
Hmm.
couple of kids, and they live out in the country, and they have like a cornfield that they tend to, and that's how it starts. Like they see crop circles in the corn and all this, and then it's the
Hmm.
aliens come to kill everybody. They're very angry aliens that don't communicate why they want to kill everybody. They just want to kill everybody. But then they find out that at the very end of the movie, which is Shyamalan's big twist that has always driven me crazy. My kids were laughing about it. Is that the aliens hate water. And I'm like, why would you come to Earth if you hate water? You can literally, from outer space, look at Earth. There's water everywhere. Like, if you don't
Right.
like water, this is not the place for you. Go to Mars. Mars is great. No water. Like, it's such
Hmm.
a weird thing to have them like be their weakness. And it's like, it messes them up big time. And so, uh, good movie up until the twist at the end. But we enjoyed it, well enough. The next one was The Village, and
I still want to see that.
oh
That was what, 2004, 2005?
yeah, and what the biggest problem that I had with The Village and my kids,
Hmm.
it was driving them crazy, is like so it takes place in a village that feels really pastoral, like it's an old like it looks very Amish, like
Right.
early 1900s, late 1800s kind of feel to it.
Hmm.
Um, and do you know like the twist of that one? If you don't, I'm not going to say anything
I
about the
know, I know,
twist.
I
Like it,
know, I know it's modern day, but they don't know it's modern
yeah,
day. And I think someone ends up leaving because they're in need of medication or something like that.
yeah,
And then they
yeah,
find out like, oh, we're being like forced to live in this outdated
yeah,
community. But I need to watch it. I don't know everything. But
yeah.
the cast is awesome.
The
They have
cast is
some big,
great.
like he
Yeah,
got so many. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix again, right?
yeah.
Bryce Dallas Howard. You've got Adrian Brody, William Hurt, Sigourney Weaver. It just the list goes on and on in like one film. It's just like kudos to him. And like a lot of them get even bigger as the 2000s come
Yeah.
like move on. Like I'm just looking at some of these names. Like
Yeah.
the guy from from The Middle's on it. I didn't even know that. Jesse
Hmm.
Eisenberg, like,
Yeah,
hello.
Jesse Eisenberg is like he's almost a throwaway character. Like he's just not really a big deal, but he's
Right,
there.
right.
Bryce Dallas Howard, it's pretty early in her acting career.
Judy Greer, who's in 13 going on 30, she's
I
on a
love Judy Greer.
same, Brendan Gleeson. Like I'm
Yeah,
looking at this cast and it's just like this is like a really nice lineup of
it
people. Like I'm
should
about it.
it should have been a great movie. And one of the real problems is the dialogue. The dialogue is just really bad. It's like
Not good.
he wanted to make it feel like it was this era of time, but didn't know how to write that dialogue. And so like everything just feels just a little too corny. Like every bit of dialogue. The story itself could have been okay. And the things that happen in the story, there's some tragic moments, some, some solid moments. The story itself isn't that bad. The reveal is a little like,
Mhm.
I think the reveal is undone by the cheesiness of the dialogue. I think if it had been perfectly written, um, I think it would have been a better film. But what I've found out, the more that I watched, the more things that he writes, it's like the worse his dialogue gets over time. Like he's not he's an idea man, which is great. And Andrew and I have talked about this kind of like when you look at like the comic book universe, like you could if somebody could work with him and rein him in and just fix the things that he struggles with, his movies could be fantastic. Like he really is a very creative, very smart guy. But you look at Signs was a 75% from the critics. The Village falls to 43%. Then you get to Lady in the Water at 25%. Then you get to The Happening, which we watched. We didn't see Lady in the Water because we couldn't find it. The Happening is a 17%. The Last Airbender is a 5%. Like they're tanking hard as they go along. Now, The Last Airbender is a whole other thing because he took
Hmm.
this thing that was revered by people to watch it and he butchered it. And he took,
Yeah.
what, 8 seasons or something like that of an animated series with 20 episodes a season, all kinds of
But Kevin,
character.
people keep on seeing his movies, and that's why he's able to keep cranking them
Yep,
out because they know
there's potential there.
there's potential, but also just you don't go to a Shyamalan movie and know that what's going to happen from start to finish. You go to a
Right.
Shyamalan movie to like really think and also just be amazed by something that you most likely have not watched on a big screen before.
Yeah.
And that's like what you get from Trapped. That's what you get from I don't know if you've seen Old yet, but I think
Yeah.
that's one of my favorites. And a
I
lot of the critics didn't really like it. Andrew and I both liked it a lot. I thought it was so well done. It's like perfect for just what's going on in this society. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
I
just like
haven't got to old with my kids yet. We'll get to it this week because we really
watch
only
it.
have like 3 or 4 left. But I've watched old. I really
It's my
like
favorite.
old, except for the ending. And I've talked about this before on this
Yeah.
show. Not the end of the main story, like you find out they're being experimented or whatever. I think that's great. It
Right.
is the bit where the kids come walking out of the woods, but they're 60 years old or 55 years old or whatever, how much older they are. And they're like,
Right.
this thing happened to us. And everybody's like, oh my God, really? And they just buy it. And I'm like, there's no reason that
That
if
they would
two
buy
people
it.
came out of the wood, there's just no reason anybody would ever buy it. And so, like, that is like it kills all of the magic of the story for me because
Hmm.
what would have worked for me is just a little extra at the end where where they're flying off in the helicopter, like they're taking these kids out of there.
Right.
If they had alluded to the fact that that was the people running the thing and they were going to take these people away again, like nobody actually believed them because everybody there was in on it, and that's why they believed. Like there just needed to be a reason for them to believe it, and they didn't. So that
And also,
broke it
how do
for
you
me.
even explain it to cops? Like
Yeah, yeah.
that's
It's
too.
just it was he took a story that was fantastical, and that's okay. You can tell a fantastic story that doesn't have to make sense,
Hmm.
but you can't expect everybody in the world to believe it in that world. Like if nobody knows
Yeah.
that's happening, there's no reason anybody would believe that's happening. Like
Yeah.
if somebody came out and said that, you'd be like, "Oh, cool. You know, let's go, Grandma. Let's go visit the Alzheimer's Center and see if you're okay." Like you'd be like, "You're
Right.
crazy. Like you got to take care of him." So, that one was rough for me. But um, so with the boys, we watched The Happening, which is stupid. It's like plants decided that they need to kill all the people on Earth, but only people that are angry. Like it's this weird thing where it's just like wiping people out. It's making people kill themselves, basically. Like it starts
Like
in
Bird Box, sort of.
no, it starts in like Central Park in New York, and
Okay.
everybody's just walking along, and then all of a sudden everybody stops, and
Hmm.
they literally just immediately kill themselves. Like they throw themselves out of windows, they throw like just whatever, they just kill
Hmm.
themselves. And it's because there's something in the air. And
Right.
um this one has Mark Wahlberg and Zoe Deschanel. And
Okay.
I feel like there's somebody else in there, but it doesn't really matter. It just doesn't really work. And then at the end of the movie, uh all of a sudden the plants are like, yeah, you guys are good. We're done making you kill yourselves. And
What?
then as the credits roll, people are walking around in like France and they stop and they start to kill themselves and the credits roll. It's like the American plants were mad and then they gave up and then the French plants were like, "Oh yeah, we're going to kill our people too." Like it's just not a good movie. And so, we watched
Doesn't sound
that.
like it.
Yeah. And then we watched, okay, so then we watched After Earth, which is horrible. It is a terrible, terrible movie. It's Will Smith and his son, his actual son, playing his son. Um, they have a weird accent that doesn't make any sense. The plot of the movie is um, they are living on another planet. I don't remember why they're leaving on a mission or whatever, but they get bounced back to Earth, and Earth had been
Hmm.
wiped out by these monsters or invaders of some kind.
Okay.
They crash land on Earth and they have to survive. Will Smith has a funky accent that he can pull off. His kid cannot act. His son is a horrible actor. And there's like, I don't know, it's just a bad movie. There's no stakes to it. There's no the story is not interesting. Nobody develops. Like it is
Not good.
justifiably a bad movie, right?
Mm.
And so like you just like can't do it. So
Bummer.
I would never recommend this movie to anybody ever, 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 unless you want to watch something bad. And it's not like a fun bad. Like I said, we watch Moonfall. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. Like it's corny, but it's fun. Like this one's supposed to be
Right.
serious. There's not any comedy in it at all, and it kills it. It's just bad, bad.
Hmm.
Um, and then so next on our journey, we watch The Visit, and The Visit is these two kids go to visit their grandparents. And as the story goes on, it seems like their grandparents are getting crazier and crazier, or they're possessed or something like weird. Um, and that one actually did okay. It's 60% from the critics, 50% from the audience. So like it
Hmm.
kind of whatever. That one's got a reasonable twist in it.
Hmm.
But at the same time, you're kind of like it makes the mom look really bad that like this thing went down. The mom's played by Catherine Hahn, which was kind of fun to
Hmm.
see her because she's just in Agatha All Along, which was the biggest
Right.
one of the biggest TV shows of the summer. Um, and she's solid in it. One thing that just killed me and my kids is like there's this, you know, teenage white kid um who raps a bunch in the show, and he's terrible at it, and it's corny, and you're like this you could have just made the whole movie without it. It serves no purpose in the movie at all. And it's just a dumb plot thing that he threw in there.
Hmm.
Um, But I mean, it's a decent movie, and it certainly um, is one of the closest films he has to being a true like horror film because of um, because of how crazy the old people kind of start to get, and it definitely gets scary and creepy. So,
I mean,
um,
I remember when like the previews for this, and like even just looking at the main picture here, it's just
yeah,
very eerie.
yeah, it definitely is. Like it has that feel, and I think that's why that's what makes it work. Like it has its flaws for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but overall, like that scary suspense bit, like what is going on? Are these kids actually going to make it? All that. Like it works.
Hmm.
It's not the best, but it works.
Okay.
And then tonight on our journey, we got to Split, which
Okay.
I am of the opinion that other than The Sixth Sense, this is probably his next best film. I like Split a lot. I think Anya Taylor-Joy is fantastic. I think
She's good.
um, James McAvoy is insanely good in this.
He is
Like the
so good
range
at
of
it.
characters that
Hmm.
he plays, the things that he does.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like this film benefited from a tighter cast, like reining in the things that you do, reining in your location. It becomes more psychological than anything else. Like, it's a pretty solid one, and my kids liked it quite a bit. So, um, we had a lot of fun with that one.
Hmm.
They were at the end, because they enjoyed it, but then Bruce Willis's character shows up at the end. One of my kids was like, he's like, no, I don't want that. He's like, I don't want them to be in the same universe. He's like, I just want this to
And
be its own
that's
movie.
and that correct. So that's the weird thing, and you'll find that in Glass, like they
Hmm.
come together, and it's like this is just not very fitting.
Yeah, I've seen
But
Glass. I don't totally remember it, but I have watched it. And I didn't hate it. The critics hated it.
I
So
liked
like,
Glass. I actually thought it was my favorite one, believe
was
it
it
or
really?
not. For
Um,
me personally, yes. But the whole point, and I think you brought this up in another episode, if there is a hero, there must be an evil
yeah,
villain. Like,
yeah, yeah.
hello, and that's like the point. And then you question who's the villain? Is it Mr. Glass or
Yeah, or the McAvoy.
Samuel L.
Yeah,
Jackson, or is it McAvoy, right? Because
yeah.
like technically he concocted this hero and this villain because he put Bruce Willis and then James McAvoy's father on that train,
Hmm.
which you don't find out until the end of Glass, which is brilliant. So yeah, I don't know. Did Split was very I didn't love Split, honestly, but I just think this is this was a true moment for James McAvoy to shine, and this was I'm gonna
Hmm.
say the birth of Anya Taylor-Joy's career, and this gave her
Yeah.
like put her on the map. That's what I think. Like that was this film. I thought, I mean, it's a hostage situation. That's really what
Oh,
the
for
movie
sure.
is,
Yeah.
but with a guy with multiple personality disorder, and she is able to manipulate and well, first of all, you find out that she's a victim of sexual and I mean, just domestic abuse in general and sexual violence. So
Yeah,
that's
that was
where
the one thing too that I felt like I know that they were trying to be subtle with it at the end because like she's in the cop
why didn't she
car.
died?
Well,
Hmm.
she's in the cop car and the cop comes up. She's like, your uncle's here to pick you up. And I think because of like the implication is because of this trauma, she's finally ready to stand up to her uncle. So she's the way she looks at the cop and the way the cop looks at her, it's implied that she's going to say, explain
Something.
this whole thing to her, to this cop about her uncle. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, that whole storyline was weird and creepy, but I mean, it worked because it should be weird and creepy. Like if you're going to tell that story, yeah, it's gross. Like, right? Like it's not like
Mm.
you're not going to sensationalize it, but like
No.
there's the first time you really can understand what's happening is when he's like, "Oh, let's go play animals in the woods," and he like takes off all his clothes and he's like, "You can't have your
Right.
clothes on if you're an animal." And I was like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" Like just bad. Like
Right.
I
It's just
want,
not good.
and it's like it's not poorly written. Like it's written right for what it is. The big bummer is I like the actor that plays the uncle. Like I've seen him in other stuff. I always like him.
Oh,
Um,
But he
And I
plays
was
like a
just,
complete
yeah,
creep and
yeah,
evil
no,
person. Yeah.
oh, so skeezy and gross. The other person that, I don't know if it was launched her career necessarily, but Haley Lou Richardson is
I've
the
seen
one of
her
the other
and
girls.
stuff.
She's in White Lotus, the second
Yep.
season of White Lotus, and she's kind of on the rise right now. She's in a couple other things coming up.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. She's good.
but yeah, it's a tighter, a
Tighter
tighter
cast.
cast and tighter location. So all in all, that one was pretty good. So we're going to continue our journey here.
Shyamalanathon.
Yeah, the Shyamalanathon.
I love
Um,
that.
we've got four movies to go. We've got Glass, Old, Knock at the Cabin, and Trap. So
Okay. And I've seen all four of those.
yeah,
That's awesome. Yep. Yep. Yep.
yeah,
Oh,
so
so good. I'm
it'll be fun.
excited for
It'll be
you.
fun to see what they think of these. And then at the end, I want them to kind of put their movies in order and see what they thought of all of them. So
And if you even want to add The Watchers in there, because that's directed by his daughter,
it is
that came
directed
out
by his
this
daughter.
year.
Yeah, yeah. I actually might, maybe I will. I want to watch it. I
Just
haven't
throw it
seen it
in there.
yet. Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's at least Shyamalan adjacent, right? Like if it's his daughter, it's close enough.
But it
Um,
is though. It is like a Shyamalan. I mean, I think I told you I wasn't crazy about it. It was
yeah.
definitely like out there, but I think when we talked about it, it's like an Irish folklore-esque,
Hmm.
but same realm of, I don't want to say, I was going to say fucked upness, but like
Yeah.
just with the twist, it's like, yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree with these like outlandish ideas, but bringing it to a different,
Hmm.
location and using a different storyline and other um, pieces of inspiration, which in this case is Irish folklore.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll actually be interesting to see what my kids think of it because like we said, when you watched, I actually know a little bit about the folklore because
And I
of
think you would
the lore
actually like
podcast.
it, honestly. I think
Yeah.
you will like it. I didn't love it, but I also was like, I have to see it because I think it's just so bizarre.
Hmm.
Like from the previews, you see these four people standing in like a box, and this is the only safe zone for them to be in, and the outside creatures are watching them, and you're like, what's going on here? It's creepy. It's
Is
definitely
it
creepy.
is it Dakota or is it Elle Fanning?
It's Dakota Fanning.
Okay, okay. Who I
Yeah,
love.
Dakota Fanning,
So
who you
that's
love.
bonus
Yeah.
points right there.
Yep,
Um,
yep. She's good. And yeah, give it a watch. I just thought it was interesting and I was like, wow, his daughter's directing. Okay, let's see what she's got to bring to the table. So it was definitely his type of film for sure. And Trapped is cool because he brings his other daughter into it.
yep. Yep.
She
So
plays the
the pop
artist
star,
Lady
yeah.
Raven. Oh yeah. And so I'm like, that's cool. He's bringing his kids into, the filmmaking world in one way or another.
Yeah. He's got to have your Nepo babies.
Yes, Nepo babies for life. But yeah, I'm
So,
glad you're doing that with your kids. I think that's really cool to compare and contrast and see the evolution of Shyamalan and I mean, in some cases, a lot of declines.
yeah,
It's
for
it's not a
sure.
steady rise. It's a
Well, it's certainly, yeah, especially if you look at them in order and look at the ratings, like it is,
so
it's a
bad.
high and then it plummets and then it kind of starts to work its way back up.
Yeah,
Um, and, and
lots of
it's,
hits and misses.
yeah, it's like Andrew says, like he kind of fails up. Like he keeps getting the opportunity to do stuff. And there's some indicators that maybe at least at one point he probably shouldn't have had the opportunity to. Like somebody should have said no.
But
Um,
people keep on seeing his
yeah,
movies. They want to see this,
yeah,
whether it's good or not. It's weird, and it intri he is someone that markets his movies so well that people want to see them.
yep, yep,
I remember when I first saw Old, I was like, this looks absolutely ridiculous. I have to see it. Like
yeah.
crazy. Just the trailers are things that you're just like, what? I can't believe someone even thought something like this up. I have to see it because I need to know how it ends.
Yeah,
It's
that's
it's
the
the
thing.
appeal.
Like really, for all of his movies, even The Happening, which is, like I said,
Not good.
kind of poorly executed, not good. Like there's some opportunity for that to be at least a really creative story. Like he comes up with the ideas that are very, very creative, very interesting.
Yeah.
Knock at the Cabin was somebody else's story. Like that was from a book that he adapted.
Right.
He changed the ending.
I didn't like it. I didn't
Yeah,
like it.
I didn't read the book, so I don't know how to compare the two.
I didn't read the book either, but I saw it on film and I was hoping so much. But that was like on screen, beautiful to watch as well.
Hmm.
Like
That one was
gold.
well done for me. Like I didn't hate Knock at the Cabin. I thought it was pretty solid. I remember being okay with the ending, but I think I read the ending of the book or read
It's
what the ending
different.
of the book was. Yeah, it's different, and I think the book ending was better. I'll have to look it up again and see, but I
Gotcha.
do think I liked the ending of the book better. Um,
Yeah. It's a shame that it's like one of those things where it's like we're gonna bring in four strangers who apparently don't know each other, but we're here to tell you like what's gonna happen. And between, all four of us falling down in a domino effect, you have to make a decision which of the two of you goes or your child goes. And that's just so fucked
yeah,
up in its
yeah.
own way. Ooh, I didn't like it.
That'll be fun to watch with my kids, so I can tell them which one I'd pick. Um,
Dun dun. Okay.
yeah, I'd be like it depends on who brings me my dinner right now, you little turds. Um, but all right, so that's all the relevant stuff. But one thing actually, there's some. So last week on Netflix, they dropped a little mini documentary series, and it's called Investigation Alien. And now
This is right up your alley.
I love this stuff. So
I know you do.
I am not necessarily a firm believer in aliens are coming. They've been here, Roswell's real, all this stuff. But at the same time, like as somebody who studies science, believes in math, believes in the numbers, looks up at the sky and sees all the stars, like there's no way there's not life out there somewhere. I'm not saying that it's intelligent, that they've all made UFOs and they've come and driven by Earth and all that shit. But like there's other life out there. There's just no way there's not other life out there. Um, and so, this stuff is at least interesting to me. So this one is about a guy named George Knapp who's been around the UFO investigation world since uh, after Roswell, but I think his main moment was the Phoenix Lights, which is in itself a very fascinating story. It comes up in one of the episodes. I want to say this is 4 episodes, 6 episodes. I think it's 6 episodes. They're about 40 minutes each, an hour each. And it is just this guy. Again, the reason this started out is because a couple of years ago, Congress had a thing where it was going to be their big thing on disclosure, and they had a report that was called the Arrow report. It was AARO. And basically, this report came out and it said, yep, none of this stuff is real. There's never been any alien stuff in it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the thing about the report is it didn't back up any information. They didn't go and do any research or anything. They just debunked everything as quickly as they could and put up this report. And so the purpose of this series was George Knapp was going to take a look at some of those things that were in the report and actually go and try and either debunk them or find out, if they were real. And, you know, as any of these things go, you have to take them all with a grain of salt. Anyways, you're dealing with um, eyewitness testimony, which is, by all accounts, one of the least reliable forms of evidence. Like eyewitness testimony gets a great rap for, you know, courtrooms and stuff like that, but it is like the least reliable. Memory is unreliable. People are inherently not honest. Like there's a lot of reasons that eyewitness testimony is not great. Um, but they go through and they kind of work through these things that were in this Arrow report, and it's fascinating. And they cover some of the more famous stories. The most interesting one, I think, is the Phoenix Lights. If you've never heard of the Phoenix Lights, look it up. It was a mass witness event in Phoenix in the 70s, and like it was on a huge scale. Like it's not like 10 people saw this. This was like the city of Phoenix saw this thing happen. And so it's pretty wild. Um, and there's it's been explained away in ways that are feel really half-assed. And it's just an interesting one. And like I said, I'm more inclined to believe that it could be real than not, just because of the whole scope of the universe stuff. But anyways, um, the reason that this show was interesting, besides just kind of following along with the story, is that this week there was a big conference where um, a guy named Lou Elizondo and a couple other people sat in front of Congress and testified under oath that they have seen things. There's a lot of situations where they can't say what they've seen because of X, Y, and Z. But the gist of this thing is actually in front of Congress. On the record, they stated that there are things on this earth that are not from here. And so, if nothing else, the idea is that if they can get this going, um, there's a congresswoman named, I think it's Nancy Mace, who, um, all politics aside, seems like she's willing to try and push this stuff forward and try and investigate basically our own government. And one of the things that they're trying to look at is, if we have all these problems that are, or sorry, all these programs that are out there to study, you know, whether this is true or false, why are we putting so much money into them for them to quickly put out a paper that says nothing's going on and that's it? Like, where is the money going? So, even if you take the idea of aliens out of the picture, extraterrestrial, all this other stuff, where's the money going? So at least it would start this process of investigating, and maybe that forces us to find out that there is something going on that we know about. But it was just this really interesting thing that happened this week, and it's fun for me because, like I said, I'm not hardcore like aliens are here. We're building underground bases for aliens and they're popping out of the water or whatever. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that are unexplained, and there's a lot of things that are really curious about science in and air travel and space travel, where we seem to make pretty radical jumps in technology, even outside of that, just technology in general in the last 100 years. That if you look at the way we have evolved technologically, the last century was monumental versus the way we evolved in the centuries and beforehand. So, it's really interesting and fun. And I don't know, like, do you have a take on UFOs at all? Right. I always assume everybody else is a non-believer, and that's totally fine. And like I
I
said,
don't know. I try not to think too much about it because it's actually kind of scary. But
mm, hmm
I think that and just, I don't know. I mean, I always like run into like these people that are just really into conspiracies. Like I met someone in my realm, my world, who's like, pigeons aren't real, they're robots and it's the government. And I'm
yeah,
like, I
yeah,
can't,
yeah.
I can't think right now.
Yeah, I can't do the birds aren't real. I've I've been around enough birds, and I've unfortunately hit a couple with my car, and like
Right.
I've been around enough birds. I'm relatively convinced they're real.
Yeah,
Um,
I just
Now I
I
have
don't
seen somebody
know.
made a drone that looked like a bird. It even flapped its wings, but it did not, like, from far away, it would look
Yeah.
believably enough like a bird, but like from even remotely up close, you're like, okay, that's a cool design, but it's certainly a drone. It's not like a pigeon with feathers that has to sit. Like, what's the conspiracy? They have to sit on the power lines to recharge. Like, that's why they're always sitting on the
Right.
power lines.
Or
It's like,
whatever. It's so weird.
yeah, I'm like,
I
come
don't
on.
know. I'm not
So,
saying it's not probable. I
mm,
don't think Andrew says it all the time. I'm not going to speak about things I'm just not knowledgeable about. I
yeah,
don't know. I mean, there's you would think that there's I don't know, but there could be how could there not be another planet with life on?
yeah.
on
Yeah,
it like us, right? Like
yeah,
it's probable. It's just they're going to look different due to the conditions of that planet or whatever
yeah,
solar system that they live in. I don't know, but like I don't like to just immediately rule it out. But I
yeah,
also am like I don't think about it because we have so much shit going on in our own world
yeah.
also. So I'm like, let's concentrate on our world first, and then
Well, and there's
ugh,
some really actually fascinating stories out there that, um, well, scary in some regards and interesting in
yeah.
others. Where there's a story in Russia where
Hmm.
they saw something overhead, and all of a sudden, like literally, like the nuclear missile countdown started to go off. Nobody touched anything, and like literally missiles were about to, like, there's some crazy stuff. So definitely some fun
Yeah.
stories. Um, and if they're real, it's scary. If they're not real, then they're just stories. People are imaginative. It's like I talked about that show Hysteria last week, where
Right.
if people start to believe something, it can spiral and grow and all
Into
this.
something else. Yeah.
Um, and what one thing is, like, it's not the same, but it's really interesting that people used to talk about ghosts. Like, ghost stories go back centuries and centuries and centuries.
Hmm.
But the idea of an apparition of a ghost looking like a person wasn't a detailed story until photographs became real. And when people
Right.
would misuse their film, you could get a ghost image of somebody who you'd already taken a picture of, and people
Mm,
started to believe that those were ghosts of people. And then all of a sudden, all the ghost stories had physical apparitions of ghosts, and like
right.
the ghost figure that we're familiar with, like the white kind of translucent ghost that floats through. That wasn't a
Like
story
Casper.
before. Yeah, it wasn't a story before um film, made a thing. So we
Right.
definitely get in um influenced by the technology around us, or by the things that become more common. It's like
Right.
like I've said about like The Conjuring. I think the ghost story in The Conjuring is great. The part that throws me off is when all of a sudden they're trying to do a seance and they're in a chair and somebody gets lifted off the ground and turned upside down and stuck to the ceiling. I'm like, that isn't believable to
No.
me. Now, if you told me there
Yeah.
was a bad energy in a house and bad shit was happening, and things were, even things moving around, like, I could buy all of that. It's that
Well, doesn't
physical.
Shyamalan like cover some of that stuff in his films or not to that extent? Like, how about Signs? Does that cover that? That's about aliens.
Science is definitively about aliens. So like they're definitely there. There's no
Right.
question that the aliens are here.
Okay.
Um, like there is a little bit in the beginning,
Right.
but you actually see aliens. Like, it is 100% about aliens and all that.
Right.
Um,
Interesting.
but yeah, I mean, alien stories are fascinating. Like, there's a lot of evidence that um cave drawings are suspiciously alien looking. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes back beyond stories we've heard, that there's a lot of petroglyphs in
Right.
Arizona where, like, they literally have bulbous like heads and big huge eyes, and um that could just be what they drew. There's
Whatever it
um
may be.
yeah, a show that's always fun to watch, because it is so skewed and biased, is Ancient Aliens. If you've ever seen that one, where they
Mm-mm.
go back and they go to places in history and they're like, um, you know, who built the pyramids? It was definitely aliens, like it's certainly things that probably aren't true, but there's also some things in there that are really fascinating. There's
Mm-hmm.
in Mayan temples, there's some carvings of some stuff that, if you look at it and you want to look at it this way, it definitely looks like a dude in a cockpit with a full like
Mm-hmm.
gear on. And granted, it could be anything else that they carve. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. But if you look at it from that angle, it sure looks like that. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's tricky. It's interesting stuff, and I think I find it more fascinating than anything else. I don't necessarily, like I said, I don't necessarily believe that aliens are here. We don't, we have aliens in the government, all this stuff. Like there's certainly crazy conspiracy theories out there. But also
Hmm.
at the same time, like if if a UFO literally flew into my backyard and hung over me, I'd be like, I believe that. I'm not so
Right.
against the possibility of it or that we've been visited or whatever, but at the same time, I've never seen anything that definitively proves to me that it has happened. And
Right.
and that's where I sit on this stuff. Like I find it fascinating. I find it possible. Sometimes, with the right stories feels even probable.
Right.
But I haven't seen that thing that tells me that 100% this is a thing that happens. And so, I do
Hmm.
thoroughly enjoy the shows. I find them fascinating. Like I said, the Ancient Alien one is fun because sometimes something comes up and you're like, at least at the moment, there's not a better explanation.
Right.
And so, that
Until
stuff's
there
cool.
is, that just takes it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's okay. Like as long as you're not hardcore, as long as you're not um, beating people in the face because they don't believe pigeons are fake, like
Right.
it
Yeah.
even conspiracy theories I'm fine with, like the Kennedy conspiracy. I've always found fascinating. Um, you know, was it really Lee Harvey Oswald or was there a dude on the grassy knoll? Like there's some interesting stuff there. And I think the longer these things exist without proof, the more believable the hard to believe parts are because you're never going to
Right.
be able to prove them anymore. And so it's just interesting stuff and a
It's
lot of fun.
tough.
And yeah, and like I said, if unless like a UFO comes and lands in the middle of Washington D.C. on public news where everybody sees it, we're at a point now where everybody that has a UFO sighting and gets it on film, people are like, "Yeah, dude, you made that on your computer at home." Like it is easier to not believe something because it's easier to fake that stuff now than it's ever been.
Right.
You have the pictures where the UFOs look like upside down pie pans because somebody hung them from a tree and took a picture that was blurry in the 50s, right? Because they didn't have special effects, but they had
Right.
ways to make an interesting picture.
Hmm.
Bigfoot in the woods, the blurry ass picture of Bigfoot in the woods. All this stuff can be faked, and
Yeah.
these days are even easier to fake. And now we're at the point where you've got AI where you can
Right.
create
I
a
was going to
picture with
say that
AI.
this takes
Yeah,
AI into the picture now. So
yeah.
yeah,
So it,
you don't
it,
know truth from.
I think at this point, barring a huge report with a bunch of actual evidence from the government or literally a UFO coming landing on the White House's lawn, um,
Hmm.
you know, it, nobody's really going to believe it. And I mean, that's probably okay. It's probably better that we don't believe there's something out there watching us because, like you said, it's scary. Like if
It's scary, and we have so many other things to worry about on a
yeah,
day-to-day basis.
yeah,
Like it's just kind of like I'm just thinking of like this election. Screw the election and all these issues.
yeah,
There's extraterrestrial stuff going on.
yeah,
Why aren't we doing anything about that?
yeah. But
I don't know. Just
my thing
adds
is,
to the plate of stuff
yeah.
to worry about.
And if they can get here, they can probably pretty much do whatever they want. So it's not like if they can travel the entirety of the
Right.
galaxy or the universe, then they're more powerful than us in whatever way
Then
they want
why
to be. So
haven't they decreased the price of groceries yet?
right, exactly.
Why?
Why are my eggs still expensive if aliens are here?
Yeah,
So
because
um
that's my question. Why are eggs now $12? I don't know.
because they took all the chickens. The aliens took all the chickens. That's why.
They took all the
Um,
chickens.
so,
Dang.
but yeah. So, anyways, yeah, just a fun thing. If you're into that at all, that series was interesting, because he goes through some of the stuff that um
Hmm.
it was in the report that was blatantly ignored, and then um kind of at least brings up some questions about some of the stuff that's in there. And then, like I said, this
Right.
this was a 2 hour congressional meeting that was public. This was not behind closed doors. So this thing that Lou Elizondo did on Wednesday, um,
Hmm.
was you live streamed, like you could watch it as it happened and all these testimonies. So it's really the first time that that's happened publicly with somebody
Yeah.
standing up to the government and, going under oath in front of the government, in front of Congress and
What
saying,
they have actually seen.
yeah, I've seen X, Y, and Z. So,
Surprised they were
uh,
releasing that, honestly.
yeah, I think the reason that it did is because you had a congressperson that said, yeah, let's do this. Let's put the screws to some people and see what's real and what's not. And so, you
Yeah.
know, we'll see what comes out of it. It'll be more investigations, more bureaucracy, more stuff that probably won't lead to anything. Um, but at least
Yeah.
it's, you know,
I'm just kind of shocked that like government was like, yeah, let's cover this. And yes, sure, you can. This was on Netflix?
no, the
Or is this?
the congressional hearing was just live streamed from Congress. It was NASA might have actually streamed it too. Their
Hmm.
space.com I think did. So like legitimate outlets were streaming it.
Gotcha.
I think you could have even watched it on like the CNN website and stuff like that. Like it was, I mean, this was not some backdoor kind of thing. This was in front of Congress
Pretty
in a
public.
congressional
Yeah.
hearing. Yeah, like if you were in DC and you had the time, you could have walked in and watched. So,
Right.
yeah,
What's
interesting.
today's topic?
Yeah,
Aliens.
yeah, yeah. If nothing else, it's interesting because it lights a fire under this investigation in a way that I don't
Right.
think has been done before. And
Okay.
so
That's
we'll see
fascinating.
we'll see what comes out of it. And it's something that it's not like we're going to find out in a month what the effects are. It'll be
No.
a year, 5 years, a decade, and when Congress or when the government finds a
Hmm.
new way to sweep stuff under the rug, whatever that is, it'll be done. But it'll be interesting. So yeah, a lot of fun. So all right, cool. Do you have anything else?
Not today,
Yeah, yeah.
unfortunately.
It was a lean week, but we got a pretty good chunk of time out of this. So I think it was good. It'll be fun. So with that, I will say thank you everybody at home for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.